So we thought we would take an opportunity, since all of this coronavirus stuff is going on, to just record a little podcast kind of looking at how we're doing, what we're thinking, what's going on in each of our areas. Because we all live in very different climates, but I'm living in small town, USA, and Emily's living in London. So obviously there's lots of different stuff going on, and it's just kind of nice to look into the daily life of how people are coping with lockdowns and only getting out once a day and not wanting to touch other people, which I feel like I was already there, but we're going to explore that a little bit more.
We have been pretty much in self-isolation for, at least for me, it's been about just over 2 weeks now. Kelly, is that the same for you, I think?
Technically, I'm not in self-isolation, like officially. So I live out in the country in small town Massachusetts, so people are kind of doing a social distancing thing and trying to be more aware, but nothing, at least in our state, has officially come down. The most that's happened is school. All the schools were canceled, so all the schools are out for 3 weeks, which I'm sure will change because we're already like a week and a half into that. And then all of the restaurants were ordered to close and only do delivery and takeout. But by decree, that's as much as has happened. Like the states that are really locking down are like Washington and New York.
Oh, okay.
And I think there were a few others.
Okay, so in terms of for you, you still have kind of like freedom, quote unquote, to go out, and I guess you also have the space to do so. You don't necessarily run into people that easily. I am in London, so prior to the latest public announcement that Boris did this week, we could go out. We had kind of independently decided to pretty much self-isolate and really go out only when we absolutely needed to. We quickly realized that we did need to go out for like fresh air once or twice, or at least once a day, because we were losing our minds. But in London, the problem was people took that too lax. So we actually went to a park to go for a walk, and there were so many people, we physically couldn't stay 6 feet away from people. So we weren't able to even go for walks. It was just too crazy. So this week on Monday at 8:30 p.m., it was announced that basically like these are the rules that you have to go by. And the most important thing, like we will be policing them. So it's now become official for us that we have to stay in completely, basically, and only go out. We can go out once a day for exercise. We just interpret that as going out for a walk once a day. You obviously have to stay away from people, keep social distance when you do that. And then you can go grocery shopping or shopping for like absolute essentials. But again, as little as completely possible. And yeah, as I said, they're allowed to kind of like police that and ask you kind of why you're out and stuff. And we went out to get some food kind of for the last time in a while, at least trying to, with the idea of at least not going out for a couple weeks. And we've already seen sort of police out on the streets, kind of asking people and fining people for kind of being out when they shouldn't be and stuff like that. So here it's lockdown time.
Yeah, I feel it's kind of that way in a lot of cities in the US. But like I said, I think we were chatting about this via text, and you were talking about how the police could now like come out and, you know, do all these things and like only one walk a day. And I think I said something along the lines of, well, I'm in the woods, so I can run screaming into my backyard and join like a wolf pack and no one can stop me. It's actually very strange because, you know, obviously living in a neighborhood, most people go to work. So I would go out and go for like my daily walk and not necessarily run into anyone. And now I feel like I've run into everyone in the neighborhood because now they're working from home and going crazy. So I see them all the time. So it's actually like I'm seeing more people now that we're all kind of in isolation. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's weird. I definitely see a lot of people out doing their like one bit of exercise a day, but just since that announcement, I've definitely already found it easier to go out for walks without feeling like people are literally going to bump into me, because we went on a walk on Sunday before this announcement happened. We actually saw a neighbor, and it's just funny. There's this whole like social etiquette that's just completely born out of this thing of, you know, it's really polite to step away from someone now, which I find really funny. And she was super polite. She like really stayed away. She waved at us, and we actually walk her dog a lot. So she was like, "Do you want me to let him off so he can come towards you?" Like she blatantly was keeping her social distance, no questions asked. And while we were talking to her, this man kind of stumbled out of the store and basically like bumped into us. And it was just like, obviously bumping into someone is rude anyway, but even just coming close to someone is rude right now. And I think it felt really unsure because you couldn't really rely on people. Then now, because they really are policing it, I do find it's easier. Like people move away from me as much as I move away from them now. So for me, that announcement, even though it made it intense and official, it's kind of made it easier for me because it's just confirmed what I was doing anyway.
Right. It's made everyone else have to also pay attention to rules that the logical people were already enacting. I think that's definitely coming down the pipeline in the US because everyone, at least when I've been out, has been pretty respectful of the distance. Like, I went to Whole Foods last week and there was a lineup outside of the Whole Foods because we're doing, and I think they're doing it in London too, the senior shopping hour. That's like the first hour the store is open is just for senior citizens because they're more likely to die. And so like a bunch of us were lining up outside and the line was so long because everyone was standing like 6 to 10 feet apart. So that was kind of nice. But I feel like there's so many people who are just going out. Like, I know people who are like, well, yeah, I have to go into quarantine, but I went out to do these things. And I'm like, it's not just running into other people that's the problem. It's the fact that the virus can live on a surface for 2 weeks. So going out and touching things that other people have touched is the problem. And no one seems, well, like half the people seem to be aware of that and half of them don't. I'm like, no, you just can't go out. Like, stop. Stop.
I mean, obviously, I'm gonna like just my scientist mom was screaming at me. The 2 weeks thing, I think, has definitely been like negotiated in a lot of ways, but the point that it can live on surfaces and in the air stands completely. And I think people do forget that like you're touching things that people are then gonna touch. And it's also like if you think of things like stores, it doesn't matter even if it just lasted like 30 minutes. Like 30 minutes later, someone can touch that orange. Like it's not necessarily like. I think people don't really realize that. And even just like coughing, moving, you can have it and not realize you have it, which for me is actually the freakiest thing because if you're not showing symptoms, you can be spreading that thing like wildfire and not realize. So I do think it's a shame, but I'm kind of glad there is this kind of like fine system in place because it's just not giving people the option to decide whether they're going to do the right thing, you know?
Right, because I think the scariest thing for me is like I haven't felt sick or anything, but because I'm a healthy 29-year-old, I could have it and just not know. And it's things like, I'm not living with anyone. Well, my parents are in that susceptible age, but like my mom goes up to visit my grandma. So like if I have it and accidentally give it to her and it's just like on her clothes or something, and then she goes up to visit my grandma and gives it to my grandma, like my grandma would be very much at risk. It is kind of nice now because I guess now would be the time to point out that I am kind of officially in full-on isolation mode because my parents decided to leave and go to Maine to be with my brother, and I decided not to go with them. So I am in the house completely on my own, kind of without a car, just living in the woods, which I feel is what I've been building up to my entire life. Like, now is my moment. I'm going to become a cantankerous hermit and live my dreams.
I mean...
But, like, if I get sick, at least I know I'll kind of be the only one getting sick. Except if I go out and go grocery shopping, like, everyone squeezes all the avocados. We all know this. So I'm sorry if I squeeze the avocado and disease everyone.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is why we wash our hands and stuff. I mean, again, it's just, like, being reasonable with all of this. I think, what was funny about you saying that, like, joking that you've been training, but obviously a lot of people are talking about, you know, how to stay sane when working from home, how to do this, how to do that. And I think something that's interesting, at least about us two, and probably not the case for that many people listening, is we've kind of been doing this for a while because both of us have been at home working on our projects like this podcast and applying for jobs. We've not been commuting in and out all the time. So we've learned to like self-discipline and manage with a lot of indoor screen time for quite a while now. So this is kind of like a level up, but it's not like hit me as hard as if I was actually having this like regular commute that I was relying on to keep me active, you know?
Right. Like, I found it kind of funny. I've seen a lot of posts online that say things like, you know, it's bad when everyone goes into isolation and you don't really have to change your routine at all. Like, I moved home with my parents in November after graduating from grad school and have been looking for a job since, and I have no income and no car. So I'm not going anywhere. I've been living here for months.
Yeah.
Kind of under self-isolation, and so everyone else is freaking out, and I'm like, literally nothing has changed. I'm just not going to the grocery store as often.
I mean, that brings me to, I was kind of thinking what if we could talk about like kind of like our biggest challenges and like also the things that we've maybe found easy. And I think the challenge is that whilst bearing that in mind, I think I definitely underestimated how valuable those things that got me out the house were, like those errands, those little things. For me, like a big one was like going out for dinner, like with Kevin. Like, I think that was a really, like, it's something that you kind of just do, and it's not that you don't appreciate it, and it's like, oh, I appreciate it now, but, you know, they did get me out the house. I still felt like I had to push myself to leave the house because it was so easy to stay in because I didn't have an official reason to. But I've definitely realized that I actually got out more than I thought because a lot of it has reduced because I can't do those errands. I can't do things like I'd often choose to return things somewhere a bit further to go for a walk or just like not order it online and go to the store to get myself out of the house. And it's made me realize that I did actually go out of the house more than I thought I did.
Yeah, I think there's something about, like, I've been trying to push myself to go out and work somewhere, which I was going to start doing that at the library, and now I just can't do that. So I know that I'm less productive when I'm on my own in the house, and I've been building towards getting a routine to kind of combat that, but it's difficult, you know? I think one of the weird things is just, I don't know, how much, like, normal things just seem less normal now. Like, my parents going to Maine is something that's happened before. Like, I've watched their house for them before when they've been away. Obviously, I'm 29. I've lived on my own great distances away from them for years. So it's just weird now that, like, my parents went up to Maine and I don't know the next time I'll be able to see them. Like, it could be 2 weeks. It could be a month. It could be 3 to 4 months. Like, the borders between the states could lock down so we actually physically cannot get to each other. It's very... On the one hand, nothing has changed, but the expectation that there might be change is new.
I've experienced that with distance as well. I think, there's obviously, I think a lot of people are talking about how they're more connected, and I was finding it hilarious, actually. My grandma was saying that, she's fine, but she's actually literally losing her voice because everyone keeps calling her, and she's just spent like 3 days straight on the phone, and she's like, I just need a minute to just chill. And so even though we're all like in touch and that's so nice and we have that kind of like extra sense of like community online, it's weird because I'm more in touch with members of my family, yet I do feel like the distance has become greater because I can't see them if I wanted to. So even friends that I had no plans to meet, now that I can't even make that plan, it just feels a little different. And even my parents, like we usually have a date in the diary to kind of mention on the phone. And there's just this sense of like, see ya sometime, like even if we don't say it, it's definitely just changed. Like those, I talk to my parents on Skype all the time. It's like what we do, we do video calls. Like my parents are in Switzerland, that's what we have to do. My sister lives in Australia, even my sister who is in the UK but is far away. But suddenly there's just like an air to everything that is a bit like, whoa, I can't come see ya.
Right, like when my mom was leaving, she left on Monday morning to go get my grandma and then go to Maine. And like she was doing the thing that she's done every time she's left me at college, where she was like crying and trying to go out the door and be like, oh, I'll see you sometime. And like I'm an asshole, so I was blatantly laughing at her. But it's that level of like, I don't know when I'll see you next. And it's just kind of weird and sad, but also not super different. Yeah. I do like, though, how I think one of the good things to come out of it is it's kind of forcing people to be more in tune with each other. So, like, for us, we're going to be talking to our entire master's cohort later today because they all are going insane and want to do, like, a Zoom chat, which I think we've probably all been thinking for months, like, oh, I should get in contact with those people. But it's one of those things that you can just put off. You're like, well, I can do that anytime. But now everyone's going insane, so they want to do it right now. So hopefully that'll after all this coronavirus, hopefully that'll carry over a little bit and people will just, call your friends.
Yeah, there are definitely like lessons that you hope. I mean, I think a lot of people are saying this for different things that we hope will like carry on after that, when this does stop. And I don't think it'll be a dead stop on one day, but that we will keep this whole like slowing down perspective and maybe consider that. And I don't know, that could come in different forms, obviously, but I do hope that some of those lessons of like the things that we cherish about like being in touch and just the way that we work and having like kind of balance, I kind of hope that there's at least a small silver lining. I obviously don't want to say anything positive out of something that's killing a whole lot of people, but you do hope that there's some lessons there that can at least be like carried through into the future, even if it is just keeping in touch a little better or just making that time. I don't know, like there's definitely a lot of things that we can take from it for sure.
Right. I think it's just nice to think that you can text your friends and just be like, hey, how are you doing? Where sometimes you just wouldn't do that. Like if you don't have a specific reason to text some people, sometimes you just don't. And now we can.
Yeah, that's true actually. I have a lot of friends who I'm not really in touch with, and to get in touch would feel kind of like a big deal, because it would be like, oh, I'm suddenly in touch. Is there a reason? Am I asking for something? Am I in like the country that you live in, or do I need to update you on like my life since the past 3 years that we haven't spoken? Then right now I'm getting a lot of messages that are just like, how are you? Like, they don't even need to know, like, you know, are you seeing someone? Are you not? Where are you living? It almost doesn't matter. It's just like, hey, how are you? Yeah, I'm okay. Or no, I'm not. Or like, yeah, I'm with my mom. I'm with my dog. Like, it's kind of nice because it's taken the pressure off of like why you're getting in touch with people, and you can literally just drop someone a message and say those 3 words and they know what you're asking. You're just kind of checking in to see that they're okay. And I think that's really cool and something that would be nice to be able to do without the pressure of like having to organize to meet, but just to be like, hey, thought of you today. How are you doing? See ya next time I think of you. Like, without having to like go extreme every time.
Right, like me and 2 of my other friends, we talk about sometimes we have a mutual friend who's just really shit at contacting you unless they want something from you, which is not a great quality to have in a friendship. Like, you don't want to just hear from someone when they need something from you. And so we talk all the time about like, you can just text someone and ask how they're doing. Like, it's not hard. These are simple friendship things. And having those conversations has just made me think about like, how often do I text people and ask just how they are? Now being forced to do it, it's kind of great. I think changing topics a little bit, one thing that I found interesting and annoying is some people now seem to think that because we're at home, we have more free time, which...
Oh, 100%.
That's not how that works.
Nope.
Right, like, someone was like, well, you have tons of free time now, and for anyone, it's not true. Like, people who have to work from home, that's not true, obviously, because they're still working all the time. Whereas, like, if you're assuming that I have more free time because I was unemployed before, then it would be the same amount of free time. And, like, also, I'm doing so many things that I don't have time to schedule them all. So I don't know what free time you're talking about.
I think this is a really big, like, it's a nice concept, but I think it's actually gone too far, because a lot of people are saying, you know, we've been given time. And though that's true in the sense of, like, time to think, we definitely have a lot of that. If you're working, especially, which a lot of people are working from home, you still have to fill those 8 hours a day. Yes, okay, you've maybe missed out on your commute, but I think what people maybe underestimate is because you don't have those obvious, like, pressure release moments, which are going out to dinner or your commute. Like, yes, your commute can be a pain in the ass, but it's still that time for you to leave work and go home. And because we don't have that, we are having to make time to keep ourselves in check. And once you add up an 8-hour workday and putting time aside to take care of, like, your mental health, that's your day. Like, it's pretty filled, like, quite quickly. And I think people have this idea that they need to, like, learn an extra language, do an online course, like, teach themselves a skill, talk to all their family. Like, it's also taking a lot of my time to be in touch with people. And I found I gave myself too much pressure to, like, call people every single day. And I was like, hey, maybe one day I'm not going to call anybody. I'm going to send a text to my family chat and say, how's everyone going? Happy Tuesday. And I'm going to leave it at that, because we have this, because we're still in that, like, speed of the day-to-day life. I think we were trying to cram everything in because we think that not moving location has given us more time. And I think has put a lot of pressure on people, for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. I think people are trying to do too much. And it's also that thing of, like, I definitely know this from being trapped at home. There's this concept of, like, well, now I have all of this free time. So you think, well, I can do something at any time because there's no boundaries of, like, I have to be at work at this time. I have to end work at this time. Like, usually when you work from home, you have a little bit more leeway. So it gives you more opportunity to put things off because you're like, well, I have all day to do it. And then suddenly it's 5 p.m. And what have you done? People are trying to figure out more things to stack in. And it's like, well, that kind of helps, but not really, because now you're just putting more things into your plate that you didn't have room for.
I think the best thing out of all of this, to be honest, is to just, like, as we are now, just keep talking about it. Listen to podcasts about people talking about it. Talk about it online. See how people are doing. You're probably not going to get your perfect schedule in on the first day, because it just doesn't work that way. You're probably going to change it all the time. We've talked about this with Kelly so much about, like, trying to find our perfect, you know, schedule for doing our projects and applying for jobs, and we change it all the time. And I think that's the main thing, is just keep talking about it and kind of keep reassessing, and don't be so hard on yourself if you don't get it right the first time around, you know?
Right, because there's things that I know I should do that are they're just difficult, even though they're not at all. Like, I know that I should work out first thing when I wake up in the morning to be productive for the rest of my day, but when I get up at 7 and roll out of bed. I just don't want to go for a run. You know, it's just, we all have routine struggles.
You got to learn about yourself. That we have been given time to do, is to learn about ourselves through this whole like madness. I think you learn a lot about what's important to you, how you can relax beyond like the obvious ways. And I think there is a lot to be learned for sure, but you kind of have to make mistakes to do that. So yeah,
definitely.
It's gonna be a journey, guys.
It is. It's gonna be wild. I do think it's funny how like my mom left on Monday morning and she made sure to call me Monday night. Like, we'll probably only talk once a week, but like she called me and she was like, just wanted to say hi and ask you how your meeting went today. And I was like, you've been gone for like 5 hours. This is both magical and kind of ridiculous.
I feel like the urge to check in on people all the time. Like, I'll call my sister and be like, just checking you're still okay. And she's like, yes, I still have not moved. I'm still fine. And I'm like, okay, bye. Like, oh, man. For now, I think I'm in an all right place. It changes day to day. We'll probably do another one of these updates in the coming weeks. In terms of the UK, we've been told 3 weeks until they reassess, although I'm not holding my breath that everything's going to change in 3 weeks. If anything, they might even clamp down more. So, yeah.
One day at a time.
So I guess for now, that's all.